Grace is far deeper, more widespread, and more expansive than we can ever comprehend. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, church. I appreciate it. Um, a lot of times in churches, the churches are temporary stations that pastors go to, and then they move to the next one and move to the next one. Um, I want you to know that this is a labor of love, and I love this church and consider it a privilege. This is not just a station for me. And I hope you know that I love this church, and I hope you know that I love you. If you don't know that, I apologize for not communicating it. But I consider this one of the great privileges of life to have been associated with Mundelein Church of the Nazarene, and think that we have a place where everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, can come and consider home, and can come and come in contact and hear about God's grace. And that's my wish, and that is my dream. So anyway, thank you. We're in the middle of our series on Psalms. And I know that there's probably a few that I will claim, but this might be my favorite psalm, and really is. And when I started to envision this, I was going to just preach from about one of the last 6 verses or so of Psalm 73, because that's the part I really like. But as I got closer, I thought, no, I'm going to preach from the entire psalm. And it just changed the focus just a little bit. This psalm is written in first person singular. However, it's written from the perspective of Israel. It's not just about the author. It's about the group. And they're writing from the perspective that things are not as they should be. And things had kind of fallen apart. It should look differently. There are people more powerful than they were. They were up to no good. And it seemed the powerful always got their way. And collectively they thought, when is God going to step in and make it right? And when we live in this time when there's so much unfairness, this is from the perspective of the psalmist, you think I'm talking about today. How do we respond? The other thing that happened here is it recognizes that Israel had not always been faithful. And that unfaithfulness had led them to their present condition. And so, looking back and realizing that they hadn't done all that they should, and things aren't the way, or weren't the way that it should be, is all hope lost? I'm reading Psalm 73, starting with verse 2. But as for me, my feet had almost slipped, and I'd nearly lost my foothold. For I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. They have no struggles. Their bodies are healthy and strong. They are free from common human burdens. They are not plagued by human ills. Therefore, pride is their necklace. They clothe themselves with violence. From their callous hearts comes iniquity. Their evil imaginations have no limits. They scoff and speak with malice. With arrogance they threaten oppression. Their mouths lay claim to heaven, and their tongues take possession of the earth. Therefore their people turn to them and drink up waters in abundance. I'm going to go back and forth to Psalm 73 throughout. You ever have a time when things in life just felt a little slippery? There are days when God seems really close, and faith is easy, and our level of faith seems strong. We tend to think that those days are the norm, or we think that those days should be the norm. And if that's not happening, then it should be a signal that there's something wrong with us. But then there are other days that come often in life, days where God seems a little distant, and faith is a challenge. Sometimes I think there's a cyclical nature to life. I'm talking to parents. There are days you look at your child and you say, this is just the most marvelous human being in the world. I'm so proud of them. And then just a couple days later, you look at the same child and say, I wonder if they're aware of how lucky they are that I have let them live. There are days everything goes by as planned, and then there are days when all of a sudden, out of the blue, something comes and kind of knocks us off center. We've been living in those times. COVID, Kenosha, all the things that have happened fairly close to us. And then we think, why am I not feeling really close to God? Why is my faith seemingly weak? There must be something wrong with me. Let me just tell you one truth. The days when God seems distant and faith seems particularly far away does not mean, not even a little bit, that there's something wrong with your relationship to God. There's going to be as many of those days, if not more, than the days everything feels especially strong and close. There is a list here in Psalm 73 of why things feel a little slippery to the author. It seems like the wicked do prosper. Why am I being so careful? Why am I being so particular about doing the right thing and living ethically and living with holiness when the ones who do not even care seem to have it so good? Why are there people that mean to do harm and quite willing to use others for their own ends? And then people who should know better seem to willingly follow them. Why am I still doing this? Does God even know what's going on? Or worse than that, does God even care? Why does the boss's brother-in-law get the promotion and he's never even been with the company? Perhaps this is all in vain. Maybe I'm wasting my time. What does it even mean, this word, my feet had almost slipped? There's a word we used to use 30 years ago. It's still around occasionally. You'd say, boy, that person, they backslid. Remember that word? That's an old word. It means they kind of gave up on faith and turned around and started living however they wanted. What does it even mean to slip? Some say that's impossible. Once someone's a Christian, they're always a Christian. Never ever happen. They don't have to worry about it. They're secure for eternity. I think Scripture tells us quite another thing altogether. It says we are made in God's image. That does not mean we physically look like God. It means we have the same character as God. God has the ability to choose to know right from wrong. We have the ability to choose right from wrong. That's the story from Genesis, that original story in Genesis 3. We tend to think there was one tree in the middle of the garden that we couldn't eat. There were two trees in the middle of the garden. The tree of eternal life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Both represented ways we can be like God. Only one was forbidden. Their problem, my problem, and your problem was that we all willingly, purposely chose to know evil as well as good. And that has consequences. All of us. I know the people you work with say, it's not my fault. My grandfather did this. My parents did that. The fourth grader called me mean names on the playground. It's not my fault. Let me tell you something. Regardless of what happened when you were 10 or 18, when you get to a certain point of life, your choices are your choices. It's time to grow up and take responsibility. And we do not lose that ability to choose after coming to Christ. We choose to cooperate with grace. We choose to abandon and walk away from grace. However, let me just say this one thing, and this is an important part. I don't think we wander away easily. Sometimes you hear people say, well, I've lost my faith. I bet all of you have done one of these things. Are you ready? I bet all of you, and I don't have them with me, have pulled your keys out of your pocket. You have one finger through the key loop, and they're cupped in your hand, and you forget they're in your hand, and you walk around your house for 15 minutes looking for your keys. I bet some of the men have done this. All of you have done this. You know, you've mowed the lawn, you got your ball cap on, you got your sunglasses on top of the cap, and then you wander around looking for your sunglasses for 20 minutes. There's also a little ritual we do in our house. We go out to eat, we go to the store, we get back in the car, and 5 minutes down the road, my wife is convinced she's left her phone in the restaurant. You got to turn back around. I know I've left my phone. And I say, dear, we do this quite a bit. I'm sure you have it. Keep looking in the pockets, keep looking in the pockets, keep looking in the pockets. And it's usually in the purse. Everybody does it, and I'll be sleeping on the couch tonight. So I'm just letting you know that's what's going on. We do not lose faith like we lose a set of car keys. So what does it even mean to have your foot slip? There's great news. If you remember nothing else from the sermon, I want you to remember this line. Grace is far deeper, more widespread, and more expansive than we can ever comprehend. Staying in grace is not a matter of perfection. It's not a matter of making every decision even consistently right. It's a matter of intention. Some of us who are parents will understand this. You have the curfew's midnight. The kid comes in at 12:15. They're still your kid. There's a conversation to be had. They're still your kid. The kid brings home a D on the report card. As much as you would like this not to be true, they're still your kid. I know what you're thinking. I'll kill him. I can make another one just like him. I get it. However, we all know places where people, for some reason, get to a certain age and they say, I don't want anything to do with you, Mom and Dad. We're moving. I'm not sending you my forwarding address, and I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear from you again. Now, maybe that's a little broadly defined, but I don't think we lose our salvation when we lose our car keys. But we can walk away from faith when we tell God, I don't care about you anymore. I'm not sending you my forwarding address. Leave me alone. I was about in 8th grade. I might have been 9th grade. I was at home. The baseball game was on. I was focused. I can get wrapped up. I was focused in the game. Like that game last night. That was fantastic, that game last night. And I was focused. And it was a beautiful, glorious day in the household because my little weasel brother wasn't there. There was nothing like a time when I didn't have to put up with my little brother and everything was great. Only Mom was home. I was home. She was there. I was watching the game. I turned around. Mom was gone. Now, my house, no room was more than 3 steps away from any other part of the house. It was small. You had to go outside to change your mind. It was that small. I went in the bathroom, she wasn't there. Went in her bedroom, she wasn't there. My bedroom, she wasn't there. Wasn't in the living room either. I poked my head on the backyard, she wasn't there. She wasn't in the garage, she wasn't in the front yard. My mom had literally disappeared. You know what that meant? I'd missed the rapture. All because I called my brother a stupid pinhead that morning. And I thought that was particularly unfair because I didn't think I should be punished for calling my brother a stupid pinhead. It was not my fault that I had a stupid pinhead for a little brother. And I don't think that I should be punished for calling a spade and being honest about the situation. It turned out Mom had gone next door. I hadn't missed anything. And my brother still was a stupid pinhead. At least at the time. He's better now. Staying in grace is not a matter of perfection. It's not a matter of avoiding mistakes. It's not even a matter of occasionally realizing something in hindsight that you should have done better. When we are in the faith, we stay sensitive. It is, however, purposely, intentionally, knowingly, willfully walking away. There's a big difference between the two. Well, Pastor, how do I know when another person's purposely walked away? You don't. That's the point. Which is why we're not in the judging business. Psalm 73 goes on, surely in vain I've kept my heart pure. I've washed my hands in innocence. All day long I've been afflicted, and every morning brings new punishments. Surely you place them on slippery ground. You cast them down to ruin. How suddenly they are destroyed. Completely swept away by terrors. As good as the ground looks over there, we need to realize that the other people really do occupy dangerous ground, even though it doesn't look like it. The ground over there is not as good, not as secure, not as safe as we think it is. A few years ago, my wife and I spent a day in Yellowstone National Park. Some of you have been there. There's geysers, and even when there's not geysers, there's just water bubbling up, boiling hot water, just bubbling up. Smells like rotten eggs and all kinds of things. And it's all, if you see that bright blue, some of it has this bright rainbow color to it. It's clear. And you're tempted to go all the way to the edge and look down in it. But when you get about 15, 20 yards away, there's little signs that say, "Do not enter. This ground is dangerous." As good as it looks, it's not ground. All those geysers are giving off minerals, and it forms a crust at the top. That crust gets a little thick, and moss can grow on it. But actually, right underneath that crust is the boiling hot water. And if you get too close to the edge to try to take a picture, you can break through, which is why they have the signs where they do. Someone can think they're safe, crack, and gone. When does your habit become a problem? The answer is imperceptibly, then very slowly, then suddenly all at once. When does sin really impact my life? Well, imperceptibly, very slowly, then suddenly all at once. Here's the thing. You don't get to control when that moment happens. I'll tell you truthfully, you can get away with most things for most of your life. Very successfully. You can hide it, you can get away with it, and no one will notice. But imperceptibly, very slowly, then all of a sudden, all at once, life changes. The ground that others seem to walk on is not that firm. We think wealth is firm ground, except it's never secure. There's never enough. And it can all go away. Do not think this morning that you have heard me say, don't save money. I'm big into being smart with money. I love people who are smart with money. Love it. And hope everybody is. But don't find your security there. Don't find your identity there. Don't desire it more than you do God. Not even close. And it never brings you the peace that you think it should. We all look back at that first apartment we lived in, you know, the one with the cockroaches that was really, really tiny, and we smile and talk about how great those days were. Why do we do that? We have the same worry now. Before, we didn't know if we could pay the bill. Now, we worry we're up night because if this bill happens, then our bank account will fall below that line where we feel comfortable. And that line keeps changing. I get it. Fame is fleeting. It's not normal to be famous. Find me 100 famous people, I'll find you just a handful that can deal with the consequences of that fame. Everybody else burns out, self-destructs, blows up right in front of you. Just turn on the news. Look at the people with power. Look at the political animals among us. Every 4 years, we are convinced that this is the end of life as we know it. And I'm not saying don't have a rooting interest in the election. And I'm not saying there might be some consequences one way or the other. I think there definitely will be. But your life is not going to end. Do not give a politician the power over your level of joy. Ever. These people, they pass laws that do not apply to them. They make decrees that they do not follow themselves. Why am I even bothering telling you we live in Illinois? That's like tapping you on the shoulder. Hey, the sun's going to rise in the east tomorrow. I know that. Politicians pass laws that they don't even follow. We know that. Our governor says one thing and lives, yes, I get it. I understand. Yep. It's frustrating. And they see no problem. We live in a world that's unfair. And sometimes we look at the wealthy and powerful and we think that they have it better. Can I tell you they don't have it better? and they won't. Here's my section of Psalm 73 that's my favorite. It's like the psalmist gets to the end. He's talked about all the stuff that's going on. Look at them. It's not fair. Look at this world. It's not fair. What do I do? Is there any hope? And here's how he ends the psalm. Yet I'm always with you. You hold me by my right hand. You guide me with your counsel, and afterward you'll take me into glory. Whom have I in heaven but you, and earth has nothing I desire beside you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. This psalm promises us three things. First thing, the constant presence of God in our lives. I said earlier, we will never, ever, ever escape the grace of God. The grace of God is always drawing us, pulling us, guiding us, nudging us in the right direction. Oh, we can choose to disobey. I remember this would have been about 10 years ago. I was driving with Steve Kephart to Kentucky. And we were on 355 south of where it goes over the Des Plaines River. Now, if you remember, in the months, that road was brand new. It had just opened up in the previous couple months. And we were taking 355 all the way to 80. And he had one of those, before we all had them on cell phones, he had one of those Garmin GPS systems on his dashboard. He had bought it a year beforehand. According to his GPS system, we were driving through cornfields because it hadn't been updated. We have the grace of God and we can ignore it. We can choose to go off map. We can choose to go in our own direction, but God's presence is always with us. We think that we should always feel that presence. That is not life. There'll be days that seems distant, but it doesn't mean that God's presence is absent. It might take 2 months, it might take 2 years, it might take 2 decades. But you'll look back and see, boy, God was with me in a more powerful way than I could even imagine at the time. It says, you hold me by my right hand. In the ancient world, they knew that most people, the vast majority of people, were right-handed. I know you southpaws are saying we're the only people in our right minds. I get it, stupid bumper sticker. Most of us are right-handed. You just think that because oxygen was cut off in critical seconds in your birthing process. But anyway, it's a whole different thing. So the right hand is my strong hand. That's the hand with all my ability that I can do sling. I can do my sling. I can use my spear. I can defend myself. This is my hand, my strong hand. And the psalmist is saying, as strong as I am, you hold me. I'm not as strong as I think I am. Next thing, and earth has nothing I desire besides you. We say this all the time, but I don't think we really believe it. Earth has a lot of things that we love. Can I tell you something? It's okay. I hope we love some things in life. Those things we love are shock absorbers for bad days. I have a few things that I like. Little collections I have around the house. Old baseball cards, a few other silly things. On our refrigerator, we have refrigerator magnets of all the national parks we've been to. Sometimes I'll stop, I'll notice one, and I'll smile and remember a day there, remember what we did, who was with us, and it brings me joy. However, if any time these things turn our compass away from Jesus Christ, they've gone too far. We can't love them or be pulled by them away from Christ. The last thing, my flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. We need to live life with an eternal perspective. I know we've met people that are so much about heaven, they're of no earthly use to anybody. We can forget that there are people who really struggle. Perhaps our focus should not be on that great thing in life, as good as it is, that only lasts for 2 years or 10 years or 20 years or whatever. Remember about 20 years ago? Actually, it's probably been 25. when the whole world was crazy with Beanie Babies? And you would go and you would find they're selling the Stegosaurus. I don't know why I remember that one. I remember why my son left it in a motel room. We get a Stegosaurus for $50 or $60. And everybody went out and looking for them, and then a year later, the same things, they're worth 50 cents or a dollar, everything else. Don't go chasing after things that have a limited perspective or temporary in their endurance. Our mind should be always on the things that last forever. Even the best things in life here are just a blink when compared to eternity.